004-13 Desert Tortoise Temporary. Laura Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, Laura Richards, the Chief of the Wildlife Diversity Division. On the screen, you can see the regulation here. You may recall back in September at the Las Vegas Commission meeting, we had the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service give an extensive talk about the concerns with unwanted pet tortoises. The BLM was also, though, represented and also supported the regulation. So we've been working with a number of partners over the last several years, and particularly the last year, about these unwanted pet tortoises. And in the previous years, there's been as many as 1,000 pet tortoises that have been turned in to the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center. There's been a lot of different efforts in the last 6 months to a year to help deal with that situation. The pickup service that was provided to citizens of Clark County has been stopped. And so now there's a MOU in place by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NDOW, and the Animal Foundation, or the lead animal center. It's basically the animal shelter for Clark County. That they will now accept desert tortoises that are unwanted. And so there's no longer, we'll come by your house and pick up these tortoises. People have to now bring them to the Animal Foundation. We also have in place a new online pet tortoise adoption program where if you're moving out of the county and you still have a pet tortoise, you can go online and register your tortoise and basically gift the tortoise to a friend or a relative. And so there's all these mechanisms in place to help the situation. This regulation is kind of NDOW's part of helping this situation. We had a similar regulation, as I said, in September, and it passed the commission, it went to the legislative commission, and there were some concerns brought up at that hearing back in December. And so we've modified this regulation slightly, and I'll go over that. If you look under section 1, sub 2, and then Katie, if you could go down just a little bit. Number sub 2, such a license, permit, or authorization is not required for the possession of a desert tortoise which was held in captivity on or before August 4th, 1989, which is when they were listed as threatened, or is acquired through an adoption program. And this is new language as of the September meeting, or another method approved by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This is that flexibility the Fish and Wildlife Service needed to look at these other methods, including that online service. So that gives us and them more flexibility on adoptions. And if you go to the second page, sub 3, a person possessing a desert tortoise pursuant to paragraph 2 of paragraph A of subsection 2 shall not possess more than one desert tortoise. And this is where we made the change. In the previous regulation, we had a statement right after that desert tortoise that said, and shall not allow that desert tortoise to physically contact another desert tortoise. That was the fragment that the Legislative Commission had a concern with the regulation of that. So we have removed this, that section. We also had to update the effective date down in section 2. It says the provisions of section 1 do not apply to a person who acquires a desert tortoise specified in subparagraph 2 of paragraph A of subsection 2 of that section, and now we have it before May 1st of 2013. And again, this regulation would become effective on May 1st, 2013. It is, like Rob mentioned, a temporary regulation. We would have to come back to the commission this fall for a permanent regulation. I also, I'm aware that Suzanne sent out some support material a few days ago from the Clark County Commission. This was actually Nancy Lepisky, the Director of Comprehensive Planning for Clark County, supporting this regulation. And the very last statement they say in the letter, the passage of proposed CGR 426 is a vital first step to address the unchecked ownership of desert tortoises in Nevada. by limiting possession to no more than one tortoise. And they go on to say, additionally, Clark County Desert Conservation Program requests the addition of language that prohibits the intermingling, that fragment that we took out, or breeding of desert tortoises at the time the regulation is considered for permanency. So when we come back in November, they are requesting, and we'll probably come to the commission meeting, requesting that we put some of that language back in there. That's Clark County's position. So we have been working very closely with the various federal partners, BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, obviously Clark County, the San Diego Zoo is also involved at the Conservation Center. We have, again, that MOU that it's in place now as of this fall with the Fish and Wildlife Service, NDOW, and the Animal Foundation to try to tackle this issue so that now a person that wants to turn in a tortoise has to bring it to the Animal Foundation. And they are going to set up an adoption program as well. This is, again, this regulation would help in that effort, and all the federal agencies and Clark County and the San Diego Zoo support this regulation. Any questions?
Commissioner Rain.
A person possessing a desert tortoise pursuant to subparagraph 2 of paragraph A of subsection 2. Tell you what, if we're worried about public notice, subparagraph 2 of paragraph A of subsection 2 make me go back. I'm still sitting here looking, now wait a minute. That's vague. Now without even getting into the meat of this thing, subparagraph 2, paragraph A, subsection 2 loses you right there. If you can't clear that up, nobody's going to know what it means anyway, so what's the point? And we can get into the meat of the regulation after that, but, I mean, sir, there's got to be a way to fix that.
Again, this was LCB language. Basically, that segment there grandfathers the people that already have a desert tortoise in possession, so that this regulation does not apply to them. And if they held it before 1989, when it was listed as a threatened species, they're exempt as well. So it would only be for those people that have acquired a pet tortoise after May 1st of 2013.
I mean, I can figure that out after reading it over and over and over again, but wow, if that's the best they can do, we've got problems because nobody's going to know what this means. Aside from that, whether or not that's fixed, as in general, this regulation, I'm sitting here looking at this, still thinking this has got to be one of the world's largest wastes of time and effort as far as this commission, as far as regulation. I mean, come on. Desert tortoises, we're worried about that. This is something we should not be worried about on any level. I understand these people have their issues. They should not become our issues as far as that. And besides that, we're going to be creating a regulation that's going to be listened to by the few people sitting in this room, probably not more than a couple of, or if any, having a desert tortoise, and no one else is going to know the rules. We're going to create a whole bunch of people that are breaking the law, and they're going to have absolutely no idea they're breaking the law until somebody comes along and writes them a ticket for it. And we don't need to make criminals of people that are out there with 2 or 3 desert tortoises in their house, and they're just like their pets. So we don't need to be entertaining this. I can't see the purpose. Thank you.
Commissioner Lane.
Well, I don't disagree that number 3 is an issue. I would say that I think this is probably very important for Southern Nevada in the sense that the desert tortoise has always been an issue in Southern Nevada. I mean, if you built a home, you paid a fee to move any desert tortoises that were there to this protected sanctuary. I mean, this has always been a huge issue. And so I think I see this as a big improvement because people take every other animal to the Animal Foundation if they cannot keep that animal. And they also go to the Animal Foundation to adopt animals. And so, I can tell you that in my business, we get calls all the time from people who, find these tortoises and they don't know what to do with them. And I think what we've done here is set up a process that allows people to do the same thing that they do with all the other animals that they find in Clark County, and that's take them to the shelter and adopt them out of the shelter. So I'm very happy to see this because, you know, what was happening before, after the San Diego closed down, we were having a lot of issues with people going, okay, what do we do? And I'll leave it up to Paul to talk about some of the things that came out at the CAB meeting regarding this issue, so.
And I would just say, Mr. Chairman, that we have been doing a lot of public outreach. All the partners are working very closely together to get messages out. We have posters, the notifications are going to all the veterinarians in Clark County. And so there was a news release just about a few weeks ago about the closure of the pickup service. So we are very diligent in getting the word out. And also, just as a information item, this regulation has been in this form since 89 or 91. We've had this regulation in place. We're just tweaking it a little bit.
Commissioner Macbeth?
The question that came up in my mind when I read this was, you know, with the enforcement of it and who's doing the enforcement and then what, if there's going to be any additional efforts, or is it a non-issue? Can you just speak to that?
Yes, Commissioner. We do receive some federal funding through the Endangered Species Act to manage desert tortoises. Primarily, it's for our southern region staff for coordination with our partners and attend these various meetings that deal with desert tortoise impacts in southern Nevada. So we do get some federal funds, Endangered Species Act funds, Section 6 funds, to work with those partners. What we don't have is additional law enforcement funds. And primarily this regulation is an educational tool. And I don't know, Rob, if you want to speak to that, or Mr. Dixon. He's gone.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick note, Rich Haskins, Deputy Director. We take regulations like this, and when we produce outreach material like Laura referred to, we put it into plain speak. We translate these regulations. These regulations are this way because that's the way they need to be constructed for legal reasons, but when we develop outreach material, we translate it into plain speak so people are aware of what's going on. And there's been a tremendous outreach program in Southern Nevada with multiple partners. So if passed, we will translate this into language that's easily understood for folks. So.
Okay. Rob?
For the record, Rob Bonamici, Chief Game Warden. With regards to enforcement issues, quite honestly, we're too busy to address these type of issues unless we get reports of repeated violations of sorts. But as far as taking any active role in going out and enforcing these, number one, we aren't funded, and number two, we don't have the personnel to address it. So we'll just, you know, when it's brought to our attention that there's intentional violations and all that, we'll address that. And I foresee addressing that with, depending on, there's no hard and fast rule, but depending on the situation, I'm going to assume most situations are going to be a verbal warning, and no, you can't do that. You have to, you're only allowed one.
Commissioner Macbeth?
Is there any kind of dual jurisdiction here? I mean, does U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service agents also have the authority to enforce a state statute?
They do not have the authority to enforce a state statute unless that state statute is violated and then the wildlife, irregardless of species, is transported across a state line or even transported from federal land to private land under the state or the Federal Lacey Act.
Okay, so even though it's been classified threatened under Endangered Species Act, that doesn't give them their jurisdiction to be able to.
They can enforce their federal regulations, but not the state.
Is there a mere federal regulation that prohibits people from having more than one tortoise?
That I don't know for a fact. I don't believe so.
Okay, any other questions?
Any public comment on this? Dr. Dixon.
I did read this.
Oh, it's Clark County, I hope so.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Chairman, Clark County. I was going to say that this is one of the times on my advisory board where I was very glad that I had my DVM board member, Jay Holt. And Jay spends a lot of time in his veterinary business and in his animal rescue dealing with people who have too many tortoises or try to breed them and realize that tortoises breed pretty prolifically. He has people come in with boxes of baby tortoises that they bred and don't know what to do with. And so from his perspective, he sees when this regulation gets put into place and the first time a few people get hit for abusing it, he thinks you're going to see a very large turn-in from people because they'll get nervous because there'll be some basically penalty to this that's going to be more than people want to deal with. And right now, there's nothing out there, even the small amount of money that Laura talked about, it's not going to be enough to deal with. Although the numbers being turned in has went down on a yearly basis, I think there are a lot of people, according to Jay in the Valley, that have not one, but not 10, but 20 to 30 turtles. And it's not hundreds of households, it's tens of thousands of households in Vegas, according to him. And so it could be a very large number of turn-ins when this hits, and there's no way to deal with this. And it may not hit in a year, but all it's going to take is one or two high-profile cases after this is put into effect where somebody has a lot more than one tortoise. And people are going to get nervous and they're going to turn them in. And I don't think we have the resources to deal with that. So our problem with this bill is there's just not the resources. And Rob already pointed out that unless there's an abuse in the system, law enforcement's not going to get involved in this, but at some level when somebody's breeding tortoises, that's when he's going to get involved because they're going to have more than one. And so I think it comes down to, it's a great idea, but I think it's almost like the invasive species stuff we put together last year. It's kind of an unfunded mandate if we put it in, and I'm not sure how we really enforce it or how we really deal with it, the consequences of putting it in. So that's our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Dr. Lane, did I miss anything? You deferred to me, but I want to make sure I hit it right.
Okay, I'll bring it back to commission. Any further comment from the commission? Commissioner Rain.
All right, so I mean, so it appears to me that termination part of wildlife in this commission, if this passes, that Clark County is going to have way too many tortoises in their possession. You know, I mean, that's crazy. Yeah, I know there's issues with the desert tortoises that are being let out into the environment, but you don't necessarily have to worry about that. You could let them all out and you know what's going to happen. Same thing that's happened to the ones that are out there now. Coyotes cleaning up, we don't have to worry about it. That's what's happening with the desert tortoises out there right now. They're being eliminated from the environment by the varmints that are out there. Probably because of lack of trapping, you'd probably have more turtles, but I haven't done a study on that personally. But this is not going to help anything. These changes, I'm talking about the changes, not the whole program. Two tortoises, the unintended consequences could be disastrous. The way it is now, at least it's not disastrous. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll close that agenda item, and we will move on to agenda item number 12, public comment. Persons wishing to speak are requested to complete a speaker's card and present it to the recording secretary. No action may be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission meeting agenda. Mr. Bruner.
For the record, Bob Bruner, I would like to, I went to the Public Lands Subcommittee meeting yesterday, and there was an item on there that was very, very smoothed over by all parties, and I would like to ask that you folks take a good look at it, so when Public Lands does come up tomorrow, that you are fully informed about what's going on, and that we do protect the herd. The largest deer herd we have in the state of Nevada, south of Elko there, migrates when it snows. They go down the hill and they walk south. They're going to put a big mine right in the middle of that travel zone. And if you take a look at the migration patterns and the collared deer that they have on the maps, you can see that the deer come down, they get into the series of open mine pits, and they just kind of spin around. So what the department did is they said, well, we need these travel corridors. But the biologists came up and talked, and they had some compromise, and they found some little room here and a little wiggle room there. But basically, they didn't get minimums, what they're looking for to allow that deer herd to migrate when the snow gets deep. So I wasn't comfortable with the presentation by the mines because basically their attorneys dictated to our biologists, what they were and weren't going to do. They did find some compromise, but again, it's below minimums. It's not fully all the way through top to bottom. These deer are not going to have an opportunity to move. So I wasn't comfortable with the biologists. I wasn't comfortable with what the mines had to say. And we had a commissioner who's going to financially benefit from selling out the deer herd all for the thing. So I think if you could please take a look at it, get the information so that when this comes up tomorrow, you are informed about what's going to happen to our largest deer herd. We should be able to have a mine. We should be able to have the jobs. We just need to have the travel corridors that will allow these deer to move and not die in the snow. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Dr. Lent?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Gerald Lent from the Nevada Hunter Association. I have a question here. I was informed that there was they had a sheep transplant off the Wells Highway, and they contracted to have 5 lions that were taken. And I've got a question, and maybe you can help me. We've got the chief of game up here, and I'm sure he's aware of that. But we had a policy that we went in and cleaned the lions out or checked for lions before you did a transplant. And the question I have is, who hired the lion hunters? And I heard 5 lions were taken, and how were they paid? And another question is, where were the tags? Who had the tags for it? When we did a Stremler project, we had to have family tags for it. And you think you could get that answer? Who authorized these and who tagged them? I think there's 5 lions taken.
I'm sure there's an answer someplace, and I don't have
I
it.
didn't hear you.
I said, I'm sure there's an answer someplace, and maybe we can address it after the meeting and get you those answers. Not a problem.
I'm sorry, I still can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I said, we will get you that answer after the meeting. We can address that and go over any questions you may have.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Dixon.
Paul Dixon, Chairman of Clark County Cab. It was brought to my attention at the break by a commissioner that the way that I had sent my action report to you, there was potentially some misleading information. And since I missed seeing things when they're on agendized items, I thought it was my due diligence. And that is, you, Chairman, had asked us to give some recommendations on the tag allocation. You'd sent out a little notice to all of us and asked us to do that. Those were 2 items that got tabled at our CAB meeting. Following the CAB meeting, I polled my CAB members just to give you some thoughts of what they were thinking, so you'd have some information from Southern Nevada. And the way that I put it in the thing was this item was tabled due to, this item was tabled as an action due to lack of time. Below are listed several Clark County Advisory Board to Manage Wildlife member recommendations that were not publicly vetted. And although I said that, it's part of the body of all the other actions that we took. And so for you guys' sake in the future, when I do put something in that wasn't vetted at my meeting, it'll be in a separate email to you or the commission, or I'll put it at the end where it's clear that it was something that was not vetted in the meeting. So I don't want any confusion there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Volz?
For the record, Fred Volz. At least 2 problems have recently surfaced with wildlife commissioner and wildlife employee testimony before the state legislature. After the February commission meeting supporting a 3rd year of bear hunting and denying an anti-bear hunting petition, the chairman and vice chairman of the commission testified on March 7th to the Senate Natural Resources Committee that the commission was taking a neutral position on legislation prohibiting the bear hunt. How is this message consistent? Maybe more important, when were the other commissioners publicly consulted to take this contradictory position, as there was no interim commission meeting since the February decisions? The second problem highlights bad management by staff. Without doing any background research, 2 Las Vegas senators introduced legislation to change wildlife's license durations. As proposed, the change would cost wildlife licensees over $200,000 to reconfigure internal systems and its third-party contractor systems. Yet Deputy Director Cates testified before the Senate Natural Resources Committee that the department would take a neutral position on this absurd change, rather than calling it out for what it is, an expensive, unnecessary move. Forthrightness toward all state residents and legislators, as well as the application of sound management principles in operating wildlife, would be appreciated on a go-forward basis when it comes to policies wildlife chooses to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we're going to go to recess and see you guys at 8:30 in the morning. We'll go again. Thank you. What's that?